Jack Paxton, editor of the Paducah Sun, was tragically killed last Saturday when his plane crashed in western Kentucky. 5 years ago, Paxton was interviewed by Bill Bartleman, reporter for the Paducah Sun, on KET's Byword series. In memory of Jack Paxton, we would like to again bring you that interview, recorded in Paducah on September 24th, 1980.
I'm Bill Bartleman, your host for today's Bywords. We're on the campus of Paducah Community College in Paducah, Kentucky, and our guest is Jack Paxton, editor of the Paducah Sun. Jack is a native of Paducah and for 10 years worked for NBC News as a reporter and correspondent. During his tenure with NBC, he served 2 tours of duty in Vietnam and also served in India, London, Northern Ireland, and Western Europe. When he left NBC to return to work for the family-owned newspaper in 1976, he was a correspondent in New York. First, Jack, why would anybody want to leave NBC, a prestigious job on a national network, to return to Paducah, Kentucky?
Because Paducah's Paducah, and a lot of people wouldn't understand that unless they lived around here, and also maybe to get an honest job. Seriously, I probably had a change of values. I had gotten to see the world, and I had probably wanted to be on nationwide television and travel and seek fame and fortune, and I got very little fame and a lot less fortune. I enjoyed it very much, but the more I saw of the world and the longer I lived in larger cities, I think through a very gradual process, the more I came to realize that they weren't really the things that I had wanted.
So that work with NBC in 10 years made you have more of an appreciation for a small town like Paducah?
Yeah, I guess so. If you'd told me 4 years before I left there that I would ever have come back here, I would have said you're crazy. It's just something that happened, and I still liked the job. And I still like New York City. New York and Paducah are my favorite 2 towns, and that doesn't make much sense either to a lot of people. I think I probably don't have the patience to go back and live there. Just from the logistics of moving around and putting up with the things in life that you shouldn't have to put up with.
If you got a call from the president of NBC, and if he asked you to come back to NBC for a fabulous salary with a Tom Brokaw type position, would you go?
Oh, we could probably talk some money, but that's a very unlikely possibility. Sure, who can say? But that's not going to happen. My inclination is that I would never go back. At one time, that's what I wanted to do: work my way up and to some kind of position like that.
And when you got close to the position, or you decided that maybe small-town life was a little better?
Oh, I don't know if I was ever close to it, but, there's a chance maybe that I could have done some of those things that at one time seemed very important to me. In a way, those things seem very restrictive to me. You can, now they seem that way. You can make a lot of money. You're tied to a studio every day, and you don't get a chance to do much original work as far as writing or reporting or whatever.
Since you've come back to Paducah, you've been involved in a lot of community projects and some activities in this area. What are some of the things you've been involved in here, and tell us a little bit about Paducah and where its future is heading?
What's happening in Paducah is amazing. I've gotten involved in a lot of things that I always said I would never get involved in. I just wanted to be editor of a newspaper and leave it at that. And I still refuse to be a formal member of any boards. I shouldn't say any, because I'm on one, but there's always a potential conflict of interest. And I have refused to take a formal position on a lot of these boards because I think there's a conflict of interest on anything that a newspaper of which your editor reports on. If you're an official member of a board. Anything you write editorially with anything that board has to do with is put in a bad light as far as whoever's reading it, or should be. But in the context of being editor of the newspaper, I have gotten involved in a lot of these things. And it just happened that as I came back to Paducah, a lot of things started happening around here, from a big convention hotel that Bob Green's going to build, and been pretty deeply involved in that.
What does that convention hotel mean to Paducah?
Oh, I think that, in concert with that may be the foundation, the keystone of some other things that are happening, but I think it's going to change the whole town. I don't think a lot of people around here realize yet how much that and some of the other things that it's helping bring along are going to change Paducah. It's going to be a different atmosphere around here, but not a bad one, I don't.
I point out that the Convention Center Hotel will be in downtown Paducah, and is Paducah unique in that its downtown is still alive and thriving? A lot of communities you go into where the downtowns are dead and there's a lot of vacant stores. Does Paducah seem unique to you in the fact it's still alive?
Yeah, and I've talked to some developers of malls and hotels and that kind of thing, whose job it is to travel all over the country and look for places to build these things. And according to some of them who had a long experience in this kind of thing, Paducah is unique. I don't know whether it can all be attributed to foresight. There's got to be a little luck there, but I also like to think that there was some foresight, and also the character of the people, the character of the individual people. One reason I wanted to come back here. What
do you envision for Paducah's future with all the developments in progress now? Do you have a vision of it?
I hope. Paducah, people have been saying for 40 years that it was going to take off. It has started finally. It never did. I think that's probably fortunate for us, because at least we have the opportunity to learn from the mistakes that most other cities have made, who sought growth and not slow growth and not planned growth. It just took off. You could get it, take it. And I think there is a nucleus of leadership in Paducah and they have formed together to work on this very thing. And I think that we have the opportunity, whether we carry through with it or not, remains to be seen, but so far it looks very good. I think the atmosphere is changing, and within 5 years we'll have changed a great deal more around here, but not in a bad way. I think we can have some of the things that are good that go with larger cities and avoid some of the things that are bad that normally go with them.
Do people in Paducah really want it to grow all that much? A lot of people you talk to who have maybe lived in Detroit or New York, they come back to Paducah, say the reason they're back here is that it's basically the same as it was and the people are the same as they were 20, 25 years ago. Do people really want it to change that much?
I don't. But as I say, there are good ways that you can change and there are bad ways you can change. The essential character of Paducah, I think it does have a character of its own. I think there are a lot of characters, quote unquote, in this town, in this place. I think people around here are very individualistic and independent, and I think they laugh a lot too. They don't take a lot too seriously. I would hope that that's one of the things that attracted me. If it changes the way you're talking about, I'm going to have to leave Paducah the same way I left New York.
Can it grow, though, and still maintain its character?
It's bound to change to a certain extent. My hope is that it changes in a good way and slowly enough, in a planned enough way. Fast change, fast growth is almost, to my mind, by definition, unplanned and probably not going to leave things very stable or very good.
Your experience prior to joining the newspaper was in the field of television, and I guess that's a pretty big transition, moving from television and reporting in television to newspaper reporting. Was the transition hard to get used to newspaper style and the way news was covered in a newspaper?
No, not the writing, but I didn't really move from television reporting to newspaper reporting. I moved from television reporting to being an editor of a newspaper. Obviously, I call it taking an honest job for a change. I honestly think there's more depth to what I do now than there was to what I used to do, although that was probably more exciting on the surface. It always was to my mind in advance, but I can't really compare reporting for the one and reporting for the other. But at one time, I traveled quite a bit, and I was supposed to, I might travel into a country, and supposedly I was supposed to go and become an instant expert in a couple of days and then do a few 1.5 to 3 minute spots for network television and leave again. And in a sense, I didn't really feel guilty about that, but I always felt that there was something missing there, something lacking, and I sometimes was pretending to be or know something that maybe I didn't really know enough about. What I get to do now, to me, is from my own personal makeup, the way I feel about things, I feel very fortunate. I really enjoy, much more even than I thought I would, this job. But I'm staying in one place where I feel that I've had roots all my life, and I feel them very strongly. And being involved in one place, and also, as editor, I have the right to express some opinions, which I never had before. And opinions are cheap, and everybody I know has 5 or 6 of them, so we try to express them carefully. But I can't compare the two, except to say that what I'm doing now I like much better, and it's more deeply satisfying to me.
Do newspapers do a better job of reporting because they can go into depth than what television does?
I can only give a standard answer to that. In immediacy, they do a worse job because of, it's obvious, and in depth, they do a better job. And people on network television that I ever knew never really claimed that it was any more than a headline service. The networks do a good job on newscasts. You take them for what they are, and the fact is that a lot of the public gets as much news from a network newscast, national and international, that it will ever get or want. A lot of people just don't care that much to.
Is that bad for people to get most of their news just from television?
I think it's a shame, but I don't think it's all bad, because a lot of those people, if they didn't get it from television, wouldn't get it at all. I believe that too.
I know I interviewed your father when he retired. He was editor before you were, and he said one of the most disappointing things in his lifetime was, in a way, was television, because he said people were putting down books and putting down newspapers and turning on the television all the time and not reading as much and not learning as much by reading. That television, to a certain extent, because of time limitations, is somewhat slanted, and that maybe people get a wrong view of the news by just watching television. Do you agree with that or disagree? Or?
A slanted view, I don't know. You know, that's an argument you can make. I think generally they get a pretty objective viewpoint. I think obviously views slip through in anything. I do agree in a broader sense. I think Dad will get over his idealism, his naivety in that field one of these days. No, I honestly believe that television is probably one of the most damaging things to hit this country.
Is an example at the Republican National Convention this year, where it seemed as though reporters were reporting rumors started by other reporters, or that some of the delegates at that convention were reporting what they heard from correspondents? Is that part of the damage of...
I was speaking in a much broader sense, and I worked in it for almost 11 years. And, you know, that wasn't good, but if you're on live television, it's excusable. If you're a human being and you're in a hectic situation that way, and you're in that situation, it's hard. It's a lot easier to sit here after the fact. I don't really... That's not the thing that really concerns me. It is... watching television is a passive kind of thing, and it has taken people away from books and from doing something themselves. My 3-year-old kid doesn't read as much as he did before he found out there was television. He used to want me to read him a book all the time. Now he wants... At one time I was complaining about the fact that he wanted to go watch cartoons on Saturday, and about just the other day he came in, and it was early. I was going to work, and he woke up, and he came in and said, "I want to watch television." I said, "There's nothing on. There aren't any cartoons on this morning, Josh." And he said, "No, commercials are on."
News reporting, both, I think, in the electronic media and the newspaper medium, kind of took a new twist after the Watergate episode. It seems as though reporters are probably out always trying to uncover something and maybe sensationalize events that don't need to be sensationalized or not as major as what reporters make them up to be. Is the news media, right after Watergate, did they get kind of out of line in some of their reporting?
Yeah, I think we're still out of line to a certain extent. On that, it's made if you look for that kind of thing in every office, behind every door, it turns into a kind of witch hunt. And maybe that's an overstatement, but it goes on all the time. It makes public life, you know, the public is very critical of its politicians these days, but I think politicians also have a right to have lessened respect for the public these days. And I think the press and just what you're talking about has played a role in that. And I think there has been a lot of irresponsible reporting about this kind of thing.
Does that happen both at the national and the local level? Do you see that among your reporters sometimes, that they I mean, I work for you, and I'm probably guilty of that at times, but do you notice that happening both on the local and national level?
Yeah, to a certain extent, it's hard to separate out when someone's doing that and when they're just doing a legitimate job. And it's hard to draw a straight line about it. It's a gray area like a lot of things, but it's something that I think we've been pretty cautious about at our newspaper, and will continue to be.
I know you feel that the media probably should be a little more compassionate at times to personal feelings, and that maybe the damage done to a person should be taken into consideration when preparing a story. Is it possible to separate good journalism from being compassionate? I mean, if you sometimes try to be over compassionate, can you take away from the legitimacy of the news story?
You have to use your own best judgment in each case. As far as I'm concerned, everything in my life basically would come after being a good human. Bob Schulman, in a column in the Sunday Courier-Journal recently, quoted me and some other editors on the subject of when a reporter, editor, whatever, should publish something he knows and when he should withhold that information. I had done a column recently on that myself. He was specifically talking about burglaries, crimes, and whose names you give to protect victims and that kind of thing. And a couple of editors just said, well, you know, essentially that's not our problem. And what you take that away from journalism, and what else do you take away from it? I object strongly to that kind of statement. Near the end of his column, Bob Schulman quoted a sentence from the column I had recently written about when an editor should not publish what he knows. And the quote was something to the effect that an editor should be a human being and a citizen first and then a newspaper man. And that's the context that I would like to live my whole life in. I hate the generalizations, and I would rather hope that at this newspaper, the Paducah Sun, we use our own best judgment in each case, but in that context.
You're saying that you don't set a precedent by making a decision on something today. That's not a precedent for a similar decision tomorrow.
It's only a precedent if we at the newspaper choose to consider it such. And I'm not often very big on precedents.
What do you find the greatest concern of the people in Western Kentucky? You have a lot of people come into your office and talk to you about everything from a picture of a pet of the month to maybe a labor management problem to who knows what. What are the greatest concerns of the people in the area?
Oh, I guess right now, just like everywhere else, the economy and the general direction that we're taking as a nation. I think we've kept our direction as an area, a region, much better than most parts of the country I've ever been in, many parts of the country. But as far as a general long-term concern, I would have a hard time saying, because I get hit by so many people from so many different walks of life with so many different concerns that I usually feel that I'm about 2 days behind on the complaint list.
How do you handle things like that when you do have people at you from both sides?
I don't know. I think I'm a big believer in sitting down face to face and talking to someone you may be critical of or who may be critical of you. And often you find, one, that, yeah, the person did have some good points, and two, you probably like each other maybe a little bit better than you did. But I'm a great believer in sitting face to face and talking, and then I'm a great believer in talking straight and writing it the same way.
The Paxton family has been dominant in I guess, the news industry in this area of the state for many years. used to own a radio station and the newspaper, and then it started a TV station here and still owns a newspaper. Is that too much dominance by one family?
Probably. I don't know. It's, you know, if asked that it were a generally good thing to have one person or one family unit own the major news media outlets in the town, as a general philosophy, I would say it'd probably be a bad thing. The fact is that in this situation, as you well know, over a story you recently did, the television station and the newspaper have had rather harsh words change hands between editors on both sides. It happens here that our newspaper's strongest competition, I think you probably feel this reporter there, is the television station in Paducah and vice versa. We keep it separate, and there is competition between the two, but as a general philosophical rule, I would say it's not the best way to do it.
There's no conflicts in management then? One is managed by maybe one segment and the other, I shouldn't say segment, but the management's kept pretty much separate then?
Well, what you're concerned about is editorial and news content in this context that you're speaking of, and in that context, I'm completely independent as the editor there as far as the news content is concerned.
There's been a lot of changes in the Paducah Sun since you've been back. A good mix of maybe feature-type stories and news-type stories. What do you try to get into every day's paper?
I try first to base it on the raw material that we have to work with. We try to emphasize the local stuff because I think a local paper's best function is to do its own stuff and do it locally. The whole gamut. This argument goes on, and newspapers went to the magazine style and the soft and the feature. Now a lot of them are swinging back, hard news. Many stories you can get on the front page. That's a slight exaggeration, but to my mind, the best thing you can do is run the whole gamut, but build it around what you've got that day. We try to play up the local stuff as much as we can. We try to mix in some good news, some positive things. We do a lot of features, soft things. I guess you'd call them everyday people doing everyday things, but it's a positive kind of thing, and it all depends on how you handle it. You can't make something from nothing, but you can make a lot out of what appears at first glance to be not very much. And first, we're in the news business, and most importantly in the local news business. But there has to be some entertainment in your newspaper, and there has to be some positive approach to the local side, as well as hard news or negative, keeping on the local government, whatever.
What role should a local newspaper in a town like Paducah, what role should it play? If there was a conflict with which maybe publicity might hurt something that's happening. I can think of an instance where there was a new plant moving into Paducah when I think there were rumors about a plant coming in, and I think as a reporter, as reporters, we're out trying to find out what it was. During our search, we found that publicity ahead of time would have probably cost that plant from coming there. How do you weigh the obligation of the newspaper maybe to make people aware it's coming in and the impact of not having that plant come in?
Again, the newspaper should be a good citizen first. One of the first questions you can ask, and you can solve a lot of problems for yourself, if you say, what purpose do I serve? What are the effects if I publish this information? And you can usually determine, if you've got any feel for people and any experience in dealing with people, you can usually judge what the effect will be and whether it will be more positive than negative. We are not Pollyanna, and we're not a chamber of commerce, but neither are we negative all the time and seeking to print all the news that's fit to print just because we know about it. We consider consequences. And there's a big difference between being the only paper in a town and having some competition. And we don't really have any daily newspaper competition in this town or in the immediate area of western Kentucky. And again, I say we try to be a good citizen first, and we try to consider what the consequences might be. And does it serve a purpose? Is there any purpose served, any valid reason to publish some information that you know in other aspects is going to have a damaging effect.
Let's get back to your years with NBC again for just a minute or two. What was the most enjoyable news story you ever covered with NBC?
Fischer-Spassky chess match in Iceland. I said that before. I still mean it. I have fond memories of it's a combination of things. I've never seen a country like that. They're still Vikings. They still speak the pure language, the character of the people, the character of these two individuals, Fischer and Spassky, and I spent a total of about 6 weeks there, 3 weeks at the beginning of this chess match, 3 weeks at the end. The Icelandic people are still of another age. It looks like the surface of the moon in the countryside. The women were beautiful, and it all fit together.
So that was one of those stories where you could go in and really learn the people and be a part of the country you were in, and maybe give an accurate reflection of.
Yeah. Of course, the network correspondent, I was in London for a year and a half. I was in Vietnam off and on 4 different times over a period of 4 years for a year and a half, I guess. You're based in one location, and then you travel in that area, so you get to know generally the area. You get to know the people, and maybe even a little bit of a language here and there.
I think when you were in Vietnam, I think you have an interesting story to tell about your tour of duty there, that you were pinned down by gunfire for 4 or 5 days. Can you relate that to us and what your feelings were?
See, a few people in the newspapers would get your facts straight. It was one or two nights it's turned into 4 or 5 days. Oh, that was just that was one. There were a number of things that happened. You're talking about the worst night, when they were in a little special forces camp called Bu Dap up on the Cambodian border, a little clearing in the middle of triple canopy jungle, and the North Vietnamese had been trying to overrun the base for 2 days before that, going to Cambodia across the border where we couldn't touch them in the daytime, come back and try to overrun the place at night. And there were 12 Green Berets with some Montagnard mountain tribesmen inside this. It looked like a Fort Laramie, a little wooden fort with walls they'd built up, and a reinforced infantry platoon had been sent in to help them, and they wouldn't even let them in the place. We just underwent a bunch of mortar attacks, and they were on our perimeter, and it was the worst night I've spent.
What runs through your mind when you're in a situation like that?
I don't know. It's true that sometimes you think of little things. I can remember looking at the red dust float up in front of my eyes and thinking, well, I got through each time the mortars hit, and I think, well, I got through one more because I heard it. And you think about how time goes so slowly and all the things that you hear, but it's a rotten deal.
Experience like that, is that one reason why you're back in Paducah, Kentucky?
No, I don't think so. There were things that kept drawing me back to Vietnam. There's something about a war that pulls some people. I never really liked it when I was there, but I kept asking to go back.
Jack Paxton has been our guest tonight on Bywords. We want to thank him. We want to thank the officials here at Paducah Community College for letting us use their facilities. And I was your host, Bill Bartleman.